people. Today we are going to talk about the beautiful world of, say it with me, jury nullification. Jury nullification is quite simple. When a person is arrested and charged with a crime, they go to court to be tried for their crime, right? Well, the jury has to vote on a guilty or not guilty verdict. And there have been cases where a person clearly broke the law as it is written on the books. However, the jury disagrees with the law itself or believes that that law was unjustly applied to the defendant. And so the jury might vote not guilty despite the fact that on paper the evidence points to the person breaking the law, because basically the jury believes that law is stupid. Now, this becomes very important when discussing all of these unconstitutional gun laws that are popping up all over our country, or a lot of the proposed laws in places like Virginia, Washington State, the ones that are already on the books in California and New York. Because if you have a person, for example, they're living in Washington State or Virginia, and they get arrested for owning an AR-15 because it has a pistol grip and a telescoping stock and all these other features that they think are just totally frightening. If that person gets arrested simply for a possessory offense and they go to court, they're going to have to sit through a trial by jury, right? Well, if that jury is comprised of jurors who believe in the Second Amendment, then guess what? They could nullify the case. They could use jury nullification. It's a beautiful tool. They could vote not guilty for that person, so that even though the state may have confiscated their weapon, they still get their freedom back. And that's at least a step in the right direction. It doesn't fully solve the problem. The ideal solution would be to get these unjust laws stricken off the books. But the reason why I mention all of this is because jury nullification is a beautiful tool to fight injustice. Has it been abused in the past? Yes, it has. There have been cases, for example, where you had Klansmen getting their cases nullified because the jurors themselves were racist and wanted to support the Klan. But you also had cases where innocent people were being thrown in jail for ridiculous laws, and the jury nullification was able to help them out. Now, this all goes back to the Sixth Amendment, and I want you to pay attention to this very carefully. The Sixth Amendment says that in criminal prosecutions, we get the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. Now, what do you mean by impartial jury? That is a jury that doesn't have a bias. They're not trying to, for example, they don't hate the defendant personally, or they don't know the defendant personally where they'd have a personal interest. Now, notice it says by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed. So when you go back and look at that Virginia Second Amendment sanctuary map, if somebody, for example, in Dinwiddie County or one of those more rural counties where it did become a Second Amendment sanctuary. Let's use Roanoke County, for example. If someone in Roanoke County were arrested by Virginia State Police for possessing an AR-15, and people from their district that voted to become a Second Amendment sanctuary were to sit on their jury, do you really think that person is going to be imprisoned? Probably not. The jury is probably going to vote not guilty, and the case is going to get tossed out. And because the Fifth Amendment protects you against double jeopardy, there we go. That's a wrap. That easy, right? Well, maybe not necessarily. Enter House Bill 100 being proposed by Joseph C. Lindsay. Now, on the surface, it looks pretty harmless. Now, let me explain to you what voir dire is before we go any further. When you get called in for jury duty to sit on a jury, you go through the voir dire process. That's when basically the lawyers from both teams examine you, the lawyer that is pressing the charges against the defendant and the lawyer that's defending the defendant. Both lawyers get to basically examine the people in the jury pool and decide if they're fit to sit on the jury. Well, here it says allows the court and counsel for either party in a criminal case to ask potential jurors any relevant question to ascertain whether the juror can sit impartially. Now, that actually is where it gets a little slippery, because what if one of those questions, let's go back to my example in Roanoke County. So Billy Johnson, I'm going to make up a name here. Billy Johnson gets arrested for owning an AR-15 in Roanoke County by the Virginia State Police. He gets dragged into court. They form the jury. Now, the lawyer that's prosecuting Billy might say, hey, juror, do you believe in the right to keep and bear arms? Do you believe in the Second Amendment? Are you a member of the NRA? Do you see how that could easily be abused to circumvent jury nullification by basically making such a strict voir dire process that only a liberal who's just going to believe in the law and obey anything the government says would be able to get through? That could be a potential problem. Let's actually look at the text of the law here. The text of the law specifically says to ascertain whether the juror can sit impartially in either guilt or sentencing phase of the case. Such questions may include whether the person or juror is related to either party. Okay, that's a harmless question. Has any interest in the case, or look at this, has expressed or formed any opinion. What do you mean by that? Has expressed or formed any opinion? That's such a vague question to ask. It's ridiculous. It seems like what they're trying to do is give the prosecuting lawyers in anti-Second Amendment counties in Virginia unlimited leeway to prosecute rural gun owners by basically saying, hey, our lawyer is going to ask any juror, are you against these laws that Northam just signed? Are you against these bills that Northam just signed into law? So I believe that we need to watch out for House Bill 100, because I believe that we actually need to contact the sponsors of the bill, Lindsay and Razul, however you say that name, and make sure that that's not the intent of the law. If I were you, I'd reach out to those folks and make sure that they're not trying to pull a fast one by taking away jury nullification. Here's Joseph Lindsay's information on the website if you want to send him an email. He's the main sponsor of the bill. I'd like to talk to this fellow and make sure that's not what he's doing. You guys need to contact him, talk to your legislatures, and make sure that that's not the intent of this bill. Otherwise, we need to fiercely oppose this. Thank you all and have a good day.